New Zealand's not on its own. I think, New Zealand's such a small producing country. I think we produce something like 0.2% of the wine that's produced in the world.
Right.
So I don't think it's necessarily such a problem for New Zealand in the mid-term. Short-term, yes, but in the mid-term, I don't think so, because we really can't plant any more vineyard here, or very little more. We've pretty much planted most of what can be planted, so it's a finite amount of vineyard area in New Zealand. So I think it's just a matter of getting the marketing in balance with the production. We've come into a fairly solid production from 08 and 09, a little bit earlier than the market's able to stand, but I think in the long term it's not really a big deal.
Like the much smaller red metal along the road, Trinity's had to watch its costs more closely than usual. For instance, it must import its oak barrels from France at $1,800 for a 225-litre barrel. They come fully assembled and therefore take up costly container space. The strong New Zealand dollar helps reduce the impact, but John Hancock's also had to drop prices for his wine across the counter. Good for drinkers, but not for him.
Directly, it's interesting because we're not, being a Hawke's Bay producer, we're not affected directly like Marlborough is affected directly by the Sauvignon Blanc thing. Indirectly, because there's so much Marlborough Sauvignon on the market at a very low price, then that does, of course, push people towards those products and away from our own. And to compete with that, we obviously have to reduce our price levels as well. That's not just in New Zealand. Internationally is an issue too. Obviously, there's a worldwide recession. New Zealand dollar is quite strong against their main markets, currencies, the UK, the US particularly. Unfortunately, we could like to see the New Zealand dollar weaken a little bit, or for their currencies to strengthen a little bit against the New Zealand dollar. It's probably more to the point.
What about costs? I mean, running a winery is very capital intensive.
I guess, the vineyard initially is the first big one. The cost of land, particularly if you're in a premium area like we are with the Gimblett Gravels, it's pretty expensive land now. Although, 20 years ago it was as cheap as chips. And now people realise how precious it is. It's actually gotten very expensive.
How much a hectare?
Well, this is really guesswork. It's hard to say because there's really no bare land available anymore in the gravels. But 20 years ago, 25 years ago, $500 would have bought you an acre of land in the Gimblett Gravels. Now it's arguably about $50,000 an acre for bare land.
Rod MacDonald heads up the Hawke's Bay Wine Growers Association and is hearing plenty of feedback from growers and winemakers about tough times in the Bay.
Everyone in their own way is finding it tough. Everyone's got their own stories and it's difficult to generalise, but from growers it's the long-term contracts that are most sought after at the moment. It's difficult if you had been growing on spec without contracts. Even those contracted growers, some have been let go, so it's a home for your grapes early in the season is what everyone's after at the moment, right. And some surety about the next coming season. From a winery point of view, it's business as usual in terms of building brands, building markets, building sales, and that hasn't gotten any easier in the last couple of years just because of an oversupply in some varieties, and also the slowdown internationally. So we face the same challenges as any other producing primary industry.
But the message from both winemakers, they're confident the industry will return to good health in a couple of years' time. Welcome back. My next guest is an elder statesman of the wine industry, Sir George Fistanich, whose Villa Maria Wines is a huge success story. He gives us an insider's view of the industry. Well, George, welcome to the Sector Report program here on Country 99 TV. Tell me, you're a big player in the wine game. How's business at the moment?
Well, the sales are growing, a 35% increase in sales in the Sauvignon Blanc. But overall, the industry is in a bit of a mess. There's been overproduction, particularly from the 08 vintage, where we had a 40% increase in the harvest.
Which 09 was up too, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, 09 was up, although we controlled that. There was a lot of A lot of grapes were put on the ground, and the industry really cooperated to keep that under control. If they hadn't, it would have been absolutely a total disaster.
Yeah. So what were the measures you took to head off disaster?
Oh, a lot of shoot thinning and basically putting less wood down. So you can put up to 4 canes and you can go for a 15, 20 tonne crop. We basically most wine companies targeted anything from 8 to 10 tonnes per hectare, which was about half of what we could have had if we just let it go.
That must have hurt some growers.
Oh, it did. Really, actually a lot of growers are suffering badly. There's probably about 150 vineyards on the market, and there's been a few receiverships. There's quite a few in statutory management, so there are major problems out there. And as you've probably seen in the papers lately, there's been a few wine companies go under. Grapes are basically, the price for grapes is virtually below cost, and yet the wine companies are not getting, all the products are getting discounted, so they're not getting enough income to pay the growers more. So there's got to be quite a realignment of pricing and
a shakedown, basically.
Yeah.
How serious has that competition got on price in terms of its effect on the wineries?
Well, we did an analysis of the prices throughout supermarkets, and the average price is actually, I think it was about $13.90 about 5 years ago, and today it's $10.90. So that's $36 a case, and that's actually, in a lot of cases, it's below the cost of production. And so it doesn't allow the winemakers enough income to pay grape growers more. And so if prices really have to move right up, otherwise we won't have a grape industry left.
So the way you put that, really, I mean, the grape grower is at the bottom of the production chain, if you like, and he's the first to suffer, I guess. Has the glut meant that there's more bulk wine, which I think you call virtual wine? I've never heard that expression before.
Well, there's an expression.
I wish there's quite a few times when we've had a hangover, we wish we had drunk virtual wine the night before. But what's happening in that area?
Well, when we had the big increase in 2008, bulk was a very small part of the industry. It might have been about 5%, and then suddenly there was all the surplus out there, so a lot of brokers started to buy it and sell it into the big chains, and then the chains, big chains and supermarkets throughout the UK, the States, and even Australia. And then they come up with a fancy name, put a fancy label on it, and that's what they call virtual wines. They're usually made in the contract factory, and they
so is it bulk grape juice, or is it already fermented wine?
Oh, it's fermented wine, yeah.
And so it's exported in bulk, obviously, in some kind of large containers. Then it's bottled at the country of destination. Is it sold in the supermarkets as New Zealand product?
Yes, unfortunately it is. But it tends to be after winemakers really extract all the best wine and the best grapes to make their wine. Anything surplus or virtually sells in bulk, and then gets a fancy label on. You can normally tell because it'll be this is produced and made for, or rather than produced and made by. So if it's an authentic wine company that's got a history about making it for themselves normally, whereas if it's what they call a virtual wine, or sort of these house labels, it's made for somebody.
It seems to be a bit out of kilter with our overall marketing strategy for exports, in that we're kind of tending to go down the lower end of the scale. We tend to try and push New Zealand products as high end, don't we?
Well, we have to, because our cost of production is very high, and it's very important that we maintain that quality, because it's a very competitive world, and we start getting which up to 25% of our product going out in bulk. It'll lower the whole image of the industry.
Are we starting to wake up on this whole question of branding? I mean, somebody pointed out to me the other day, if we're selling Montana wine in America, Americans are going to go, that's that rocky, dry state in the West. What's that got to do with wine? Do you know what I mean? Are we kind of fine-tuning the imagery in that brand?
Well, Montana's changed the name to Brancott, so they had to, so it's actually known as Brancott in the States, and they're doing the same here. But,
how about you, Villa Maria? Have you?
Well, I suppose in some ways we're the only actually, I suppose, when you say like international, reasonably large company, or you might say we're a large boutique, but we're about number 5 in the pecking order, and we sell to about 50 countries, but we're the only New Zealand-owned family company left now, because most of the companies have actually ended up in sold offshore. But I think one thing about it, with New Zealand companies, we have a very strong passion to establish New Zealand. Not the New Zealand wine industry in total. And we don't just rely on Sauvignon Blanc, we're completely concentrating on Chardonnay, Riesling, Pinot Noir, and our Merlot. So we're trying to build up the whole image of the wine industry, because it's very dangerous focusing on one brand.
But if I want to buy a bottle of Villa Maria Chardonnay, say in California, will it be called Villa Maria?
Oh yes, yeah. We're Villa Maria right across the board.
Right across the board,
50 different countries, But I think it's important. Sometimes you can get some of the companies come from overseas, and they're very focused on Sauvignon Blanc, say from New Zealand, maybe Shiraz from Australia. But it's important that we actually promote our total range. We make superb wines right across the board.
Absolutely, I'm sure you do. Just finally and very briefly, just still on this whole question of marketing, is sustainably produced wine a major feature of our marketing campaigns?
Very, very much so. I've just been in the States twice this year, and I was talking to one of the large distributors in the States, in fact one of the largest, and I sort of said, what's our point of difference? What should we be doing about selling our wine against the rest of the world? And he said focus on the fact that you're an authentic wine company. You've been around for 50 years, because that's important with all the sort of
track record
brands coming in. But he said sustainability, very, very big. And he said even organics are starting to grow. He said they are getting hotel chains and restaurant chains asking, can you get us a large parcel of organic wine? But the sustainability seems to be a fairly acceptable term, and I think it's a credit to the wine growers. As an industry, we are committed to be totally sustainable right across the whole industry, at 670 wine companies by 2012. Which is a large commitment,
That is a very large commitment. Well, I wish you all the very best with it. And let's hope that in these markets, these high-end markets, they're getting the message about our beautiful, sustainably produced wine. George, thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Sir George Vistonich. I'll be back soon with another edition of Sector Report. And remember, you can catch up with the program on our website, country99tv.co.nz. Catch you next time.